I remind myself and whoever I'm talking to that the discomfort that I'm experiencing right now from my fucking kitchen renovation is the absolute best problem anybody in their entire world could ever have. The stress that I experience from raising a healthy 6-year-old and a healthy 2-year-old is the absolute best problems that I could ever have. That my kids are loud and obnoxious because they're safe and they're happy and they're fed. They're the best problems that I could ever have. So I'm really embracing. I think people would be happier if they embraced their problems.
I'd rather be sidelined trying to achieve greatness than watch greatness achieved and it only set on the sideline. Now introducing your host, Jacob Emery.
This episode of the Iron and Infrastructure Podcast is brought to you by R&R Pipeline Inc., an infrastructure company. Join our team today at rrpipelineinc.com. Welcome to another edition of the Iron and Infrastructure Podcast. And today, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about simplicity. Simple scales, complex fails. Doug Levy?
Levy.
Oh, man, I know it's going to fuck it up. All right, hit me with
Levy.
it. Say it again.
Doug Levy.
Levy.
Yep,
right?
just a hard E. Levy.
Well, Doug, I mispronounced your name, and you just told me that. And I look down, and I see your name, and I'm like, fuck, I knew I was going to do this. So, what a way to start the show off. Talk about not being simple. Simple scales, complex fails, Doug. What does that represent to you in your life? Let's talk business first.
Business first. So yeah, I mean, listen, the harder things are, the harder things are, right? So and what's interesting is I kind of have a different view of simplicity and complexity. I think that clarity makes complexity simple. Mm-hmm. So you can have, like in businesses that I've built, it's kind of a bit of it, like from the outside in, it looks like a tangled web of workflows and stuff. But if you actually look at it, it's very clear, and that's what makes it simple. So I don't think complexity is A to B. I'm sorry, I don't think simplicity is necessarily A to B. It could be A to B to C to D, back to B, back to C, back to A, back to E, back to F. But if you've got the manual, just read the manual, follow the steps.
So when you go into a business, what's the first order that you're looking at? Is there like a simple like starting point? Is it the vocabulary that people use? There's a lot of things that probably are overlooked in business. And I know, just how do you say certain things, or what do the terms represent to that business? I think we all kind of identify with margin versus markup, or whatever the phrase may be. Your background kind of determines that coming into. So where's your starting point at normally in a business?
Honestly, my starting point is what's written down. What's written down? Because if it isn't written down, it doesn't exist. It's not an operational asset. So that's it. Like, that's where I start, is what do you have written down? And you should hear like all the stuttering and stammering that comes out. Well, we know what to do. And like, I've been doing this for years, and like, it's not that hard to figure out. Yeah, it's up here. So, so a business that has more institutional knowledge than things written down. And institutional knowledge is kind of like a little catchphrase, just for your listeners that may not know. It's when people know things in their head about how something works, but it isn't written down anywhere. So many businesses have this institutional knowledge, but it isn't written down anywhere. And God forbid somebody ever leaves that building and never comes back. You got a big problem.
Whenever assessing the value of a business, probably the biggest risk liability is, call it a key man, call it an interdependency. But if it's a one-person show that business is ran off of, the value declines very quickly. And it's very obvious, I think, from an outside perspective, looking at that business.
Yes.
Just here's your playbook. Here's how we do business as a whole. And you can visualize it and explain it, but then you're looking at it also. You know, thinking about what drives business value. That has to be the starting point. Show me your processes. Show me how you do what you do.
So yeah, so just for context, so I'm like an operations consultant / fractional COO. My pedigree is that I started an insurance agency from scratch, ran it for 10 years and sold it. Then I became the chief operating officer of a 45 person insurance agency. Ran that for 10 years, and we grew in my 10 years as chief operating officer, we grew from $3.7 million in revenue to $12.1 million in revenue. We only increased headcount by about 9 people, and
Wow.
we sold at a 40% margin for a record EBITDA multiple. So that's my jam. So after we sold, and you and I, before we started recording, we were talking about villain stories. My villain story is that I had no equity and the owner didn't take care of me the way that he should have.
Mm.
That's the bottom line. So I left and said, I'm going to start my own business and I'm going to help other businesses do what I did for this one. And I'm going to create value wherever I go. So the process is the first thing you've got to do when you go into a business is you've got to look around. You've got to speak little and listen much. So I come
Yes.
into a business and I start my process with what I call an operational assessment where I'll look at your finances. I'm not a strategic finance guy, but I'll look at your finances for some obvious things. I'll look at again, I'm looking at what's written down. Show me everything that's written down from your workflows, from your servicing, from your onboarding, from your training, your hiring processes.
Hmm.
A lot of businesses have workflows. Nobody has their hiring process written down. This is what we're looking for on a resume. This is what we're screening for before somebody comes in
Hmm.
for an interview. This is what we're asking during an interview.
The
This is what
script,
we're
right?
measuring, all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. So it's basically finances, employee roster, employee turnover information, which is a
Yep.
huge tell,
Massive.
and then what's written down. Show me everything you have here that's
Hmm.
written down. And then from there, I'm also looking at culture. I'm looking at like this institutional knowledge thing.
Hmm.
I'm looking at blurred leadership lines, like businesses that have like people that are called team leads, but they don't actually lead a team or they don't like have
Hmm.
like discrete responsibilities and stuff like
Hmm.
that. So then I come from there and I make recommendations and then a lot of my some most of my clients say like, all right, we want you to help us do all of this. They don't have to. They could say, okay, thanks for the information.
Yeah.
We'll execute. But typically if you're in that kind of position, it's because you can't execute. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, most people they're too busy running a business and they get to a point where they need somebody to work on the business.
What's got us here won't get us there. If you're looking to
Bingo.
scale a business, and especially today's age, and I think we're in the most dynamic and pivotal time in human history, in my opinion, with what is acceleration today, what's acceleration 2 years from now, and what was acceleration even 2 years ago.
Oh yeah.
It's incredible. I can do things today I never thought would be, I never even considered a truth. This was like a month ago, I would have never thought it's possible.
Yeah.
I'm like a very ADHD visionary, essential detail, go fast all the time.
Yep.
And I know exactly how I operate, where my lane is, where I'm not good at.
Yep.
And I struggle with detail. I struggle with admin work. I don't do it. That's why. Now I
Yeah.
know I
Yeah.
don't want to do it. But man, I can tell you
And that's
what,
important. That's
oh,
key.
very.
And you and I were talking about looking in the
Mhm.
mirror. Like, I think the greatest asset a visionary could have is to understand what he or she is not good at and to bring in
Mhm.
other people to do those things. Because there's people that kind of like end up in this know-it-all kind of mindset. And that's just,
Yeah.
it's not going to get you as far as saying, like, I'm good at this and I'm not good at that. And I'm going to
We
bring on
are the
somebody that I
biggest
respect.
bottleneck. We are the
100%.
biggest bottleneck majority of the time. It's the lack of self-awareness.
100%.
It's
100%.
amazing what you can accomplish, Doug, when nobody cares who gets the credit. I
Yeah.
forget the president that made that statement, but when no
Yeah.
one cares about credit,
Yeah.
I'm going to have credibility based on how I operate, but my presence inside the business doesn't need to be there as much as my standard that is set. And I
Yep.
think that so many people misunderstand what credibility is. If you're a
Yep.
leader, you're going to get credit on what you do, not what you say. So
Yep.
being that sponge and just listening, I think the
Yep.
best communication skill, in my opinion, is actually being able to listen.
100%. 100%. That's
It's something I've
the
struggled with too.
yeah, a lot of people struggle with it because we're just
Mhm.
not nobody ever taught us that. And it's just not it's one of those human urges that you have to overcome, the same way that you have to like overcome just wanting to swing your fist and
Mhm.
instead just have an actual conversation with somebody and say, "Hey, you hurt my feelings. Let's talk about what that means for me and for you and for our relationship." That's a lot harder than just throwing a haymaker and moving on.
Yeah, addressing the problem from a logical standpoint,
Yep.
and especially today, the human to human interaction that, B2B, B2C, like it's always a thing. What's your business style like? Are you selling to a consumer or to another business? The human to human element, though, in the future is going to be the main driver because all the
Yeah.
interaction done backstage is going to be automated for the most
Yep.
part.
Yep.
And how do you interact and communicate with a person? How do you articulate with a, visual diagram or a metaphor or tell a story to get your vision across to someone to get them to understand what's in it for them, not just what's in it for you. And
Yep.
just that simple understanding of how that person's going to receive the information and what it means to them in general, it's profound. Listening to a good communicator, it's something I've studied communication because it's been an Achilles heel of mine probably
Oh
my
yeah.
entire life. So I've had to study it. They don't
Yeah.
teach you this in school. And that is a valid point, and it's a very good point I think that people need to understand.
I always say I have a management degree. And I always say, and I've been managing people for 25 years. I always say I should have gotten a psychology degree because I would have used that a hell of a lot more than I use any of these sterile business principles that I learned in an auditorium. I learned much more on the street about speaking to people and from my own successes and failures.
Mm. I love it. I mean, it's amazing. That's been my personal development area of learning for probably the last year and a half,
Yeah.
understanding what drives people, the psychology behind how they receive information, how they articulate information, what's their motive when they're not very clear.
Yep.
Being very clear, though, you started out with clarity. I have a framework that I use called the CLEAR framework, and it's something that I use when setting a goal or delegating.
Okay.
And so the CLEAR framework is clarity. Do you have specific clarity, yes or no, black and white of the outcome? Do you need to learn anything? Is there a gap in your training or development? So do you need to learn? What is the end date that you want to have it done? So date
Mm,
and time of completion. Did you advocate or did you delegate? So is it a capacity? Are you incentivized? What's the actual motive behind of it? And then the last one is a roadblock. So do you have a roadblock that is not allowing you to get to the outcome that you want? I can be the best chef in the world. I can have everything I need. I'm incentivized because this is how I get paid, but I got to cook this omelet and I don't have any fucking eggs. I can't do
yep.
anything about it. There's the roadblock, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's something that I put together myself because of my own incompetencies, and it's helped me a ton with
I love
clarity.
it.
What does it mean to you, though? Like clarity, when you say clarity, what's it look like? Because I think it's the hardest part of today.
Clarity to me means lowering your expectations of the people around you in the way that you communicate. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I don't mean that in like walking around thinking everybody's stupid, but I communicate, especially in a business sense, I communicate in a way where my primary goal is to leave no doubt. Leave no doubt. And that typically means setting higher expectations of myself and setting lower expectations of those around me. Because as a
Mm,
leader, if something doesn't go the way that I intended for it to go, the first place I'm looking is in the mirror. And I'm saying, where did I go wrong? What could I have done better to
mhm,
get this person or this department or this thing to go the way that I wanted to? And if there's anything that I could have done better, I'm just going back to the drawing board and making it better the next time. And I'm not blaming anybody else. I'll give you a perfect story. I have a client who just hired a new business development representative, and she was supposed to start yesterday at 9 a.m. And we had conversations with her last week. We were on a meeting with her last week. We said, okay, you're going to start Wednesday at 9 a.m. We've got to run your background check. We've got to do this. We've got to do that. We've got to do this. We've got to do that. She says, okay. Yesterday comes around, 9:07, she's not there. 9:10, she's not there. 9:17, she's not there. She texts the owner and says, did you want me to come in today? And the owner says, yes, we're expecting you today. And the owner calls me in a panic. And I said, and we ended up saying, like, there was some sort of misunderstanding. It's possible that the employee was waiting for us to say that the background check went through, was waiting for confirmation. We spoke on the phone. Some people are just not great auditory processors. Maybe it just didn't land. And we never followed up with a written email saying, hey, great speaking with you. Your official start date and time is Wednesday at 9 a.m. So out of 1,000 situations where something like that happens, 999 times, the employer is just going to get bent out of shape, get pissed off, be like, this person's a fucking idiot. I can't believe they didn't understand like, how did they not get it? But one time out of 1,000, you say, you know what? That's on me, because I don't operate my life assuming that everybody's going to know exactly what I mean all the time. So when she came in, we said, no harm, no foul. There was a misunderstanding, a miscommunication. You're here now. Let's not throw away all the effort that we put into vetting each other and bringing you on board, and let's just go. And that's just not a very common attitude. And
It's not.
I had to coach my client through that. But and the coaching that I've done with my client until now has led us to this point. But I was very proud of her. We were able to just get past it, move on, look in the mirror and say, you know what? We didn't say this clearly enough. So that's the type of operation, because if you don't operate that way, you just go through your entire life pissed off at other people for not meeting your expectations.
Mm-hmm. And then, predetermined expectations or unspoken expectations or predetermined resentments.
I
So
love that. Yeah.
if you don't clearly say and define exactly what done looks like, I call it DOD, definition of done.
Yep.
And whenever you're putting something in place, if it's not like date, time specific to the degree there's no way to look at it black or white, it's amazing how we can take a message and play the telephone game and turn it upside down
Oh yeah.
very quick. But if it's communicated and it's documented too, I think the documentation and communication both are like huge aspects. We said X and here's X through a lens of
Yep.
proof. So it's documented via email, via text, whatever it is. And it's just that secondary thing on the process that you have in place. So I always try to think, what's the process the person followed? That's the first and foremost. What did I
Yep.
do to set this person up for success?
Yep.
Process first and then address people second. That's how I kind of look
I,
at it.
I've
What's your
done
thoughts on
that.
that?
I love that, because if you people are the most important things in business.
Mhm.
People are the most important things, and we have to protect people. We always have to protect people. And the way that we protect people, processes are not living things. We can do
Mhm.
whatever we want with a process. We can change it, we can throw it out, we can start over, we can alter it, we can say it
Mhm.
didn't work, and nobody's going to get their feelings hurt.
Right.
People get their feelings hurt. And so process is the least risky place to look.
Mhm.
And it's the least risky place to make changes. So I've always been a process first, people second. So and like there's a lot of managers and leaders that it's just ingrained in them that when something goes wrong, it's like, who was at the wheel? And
Yeah.
they draw the ire, and that's just not fair. And it leads to resentment, and it leads to bad feelings. And that's when people leave organizations. If you're not
Mhm.
taking care of your people, you're not going to grow. You're not going to grow.
What happens when you get in a dog fight with a customer or something that occurs? Do you have that person's back? Are you there fighting for your team?
Yep.
First and foremost, making sure that they did what they're supposed to do,
Yep.
checking in on the situation. But what you do in public says a lot of, I think, about leadership. I
Yeah.
always try to praise in public, like attaboys in public,
Yep.
criticize privately, address it
Absolutely.
privately. One thing that burns me more than anything is criticizing someone directly in a group
Oh
conversation.
yeah. Oh yeah.
It
That's just out of
demoralizes that
bounds.
person. It
It's just out
is.
of bounds, man. And that's the thing that
Yeah.
people remember. Like I've had so many conversations and like it's one of those there's all sorts of different quotes about how you make people feel. There's the Maya
Mhm.
Angelou quote about people will never remember what you said, they'll always remember how you made them feel. And people
Yeah.
hold on to stuff for a very, very, very long time.
Mhm.
And it's human nature. I mean, if you want to go back to the caveman days, it's human nature that pain creates a much more significant response in our bodies and in our brains than pleasure does.
Mhm.
And that's something that's important to keep in mind because you can praise the hell out of somebody 1,000 times. They'll remember that one time you were slightly critical about something that they did. And this is the art of leading
Mhm.
people. The other thing that's interesting is I mentioned that we tripled, quadrupled the size of this company. We only
Mhm.
added like 20 or 30% headcount. The big thing was that in my 10 years with the company, the average tenure of our 45 employees was 9 years.
Wow.
And we had turnover below 10%, like throughout the course of my tenure. So that's how you
Incredible.
grow. That's how you grow a business
Mhm.
is by keeping people happy, making
Mhm.
sure they feel appreciated, giving them
Mhm.
grace when something doesn't go the right way because they're human and those things happen, and then just
Mhm.
moving past it. And then when you do that for somebody, they'll work even harder for you.
There is that's very impressive, by the way, to
Thank
grow
you.
that scale, that tenure of personnel on a staff is
Yep.
it's profound. To me, I'm listening to that, I'm like, oh, I got some work to do.
Yeah.
I'm in an industry, Doug, where turnover is, I think, on average, right around 60%.
Yeah.
So, R&R Pipeline, my main business, is a natural gas distribution. We're a
Yep.
contractor for larger utilities. And
Yep.
here's simplicity for you. What do we do at R&R Pipeline? I could go into detail and confuse the ever living hell out of you really quick, but just to break it down, we go into communities and update aging infrastructure by installing new pipe, energizing new pipe, and restoring property and leaving
Sure.
town and going to the next project. Now that could be a $7 or $8 million project that we're at for 10 months in a year, big scale. But that's the three-step
Sure.
process that we have. And that's the easiest way for me to
Sure.
pinpoint simplicity with our pipeline. But man, I tell you what, we're in a dogfight right now with the drive of data centers. Now natural gas is really the thing that's driving the data center push because the power grid can't support
Yep.
the electricity transfer. So they have to have a source to create their own basically power plant on site.
Yep.
Natural gas is that source. And it's a wild thing right now. And so wage wars right now. I mean,
Yep.
poaching, everybody's fighting like tooth and nail just to have enough to get their workload done. It's not
Yep.
a discrepancy of work, it's a discrepancy of personnel to do the work.
Yep.
It's something that is common for a 50 to 60% turnover rate to be in the industry. And
Yep.
we went through it last year, and then it's like, okay, how do we redefine what good looks like, reset our standard, and go get the people that we want on the team that we know that can drive the business where it needs to go. But how do we get their dreams to fit inside the business itself? So I call it
That's
individual
huge.
success, team significance, and a legacy of excellence. That's what it should look like for us. If we're doing the right things, that's what it is. The
Love that.
individual comes in, we develop them as a person for them to develop, their own success criteria. It creates a team of significance, a dream team, and then we leave that legacy of excellence.
I love
It's
that.
rare though to have that mindset, especially in an industry like ours where it's the wild, wild west.
Oh,
What is
sure.
that? When I say that, what does that mean to you? What do you hear when you hear something like that?
It means that you're bringing people on with the intention of actually keeping them and you're putting thought into it before the person walks in the door. And nobody does that. And that's the problem. Like, listen, there are some industries where the market turnover rate is just higher than it is in other industries.
Hmm.
There's nothing that just is. That's okay. But nobody could tell me that there's not an opportunity to make a 20 or 30% improvement in that number. But people don't think ahead of time. They're not deliberate. They're not disciplined. And because it's a lot easier to just respond to stimuli than
Mm,
it is to actually think through a problem. So what ends up happening is when somebody doesn't have that kind of mindset and they just say, "Okay, I need a worker. The market rate for this type of worker is 35 bucks an hour. I'm going to try to get somebody for 35 bucks an hour, maybe 34 if I can, maybe
mm,
36 if I have to." But nobody's thinking about what do I need to do to either A, pay this guy 45 bucks an hour so he ain't even thinking about it after he signs on, or B, make my $35 an hour way better than somebody else's $35 an hour if the economics support it. But I think another thing is that people don't do the math of how expensive turnover actually is and how you can
mm,
actually afford to pay people a lot more because when they stay, the work gets done at a higher quality and a faster pace with so much more stability, with no cultural damage, no emotional problems, no A players seeing that you hired another clown. So you hire
mm.
people at above market rate if it warrants it. And you'd be surprised what that math looks like.
You nailed that on the head, and right where I was getting ready to segue to is it's the cost versus investment. To me, that's how I view it.
Yep.
What's your mentality, or how do you frame looking at a person and what you put into the development of them, the
Yep.
freedom that they can have, the flexibility to fit their life? Maybe
Yep.
you have this role and responsibility. You have this requirement of what needs to be done. This is what done looks like,
Yep.
but it doesn't mean it has to be 9 to 5, and you have to have this set structured, overly micromanaged,
Yep.
team, or like just suffocating you. Let the person breathe a little bit. And
Yep.
that's when you really find out what is someone's unique ability. How do they operate best? Me and my
Sure.
business partner used to be, we're opposite in mindset, but we have the same end goal. And it's amazing
That's
how
important.
I was an early riser, dude. I get up 3 a.m. and he would stay at the office till 9 p.m. So it'd be like, when we were running the operation before we bought the company, I was 5 to 5 and he was probably 7 or 8 to, 12 hours later. And so it
Yep.
worked out perfectly. It
Yep.
just worked out better for us that way. He didn't want to get up early, and I
Yep.
naturally already did, and it just works. But are you investing in your people, or do they cost you money?
Yep.
And if you look at it through the investment lens, then you're building a person up. And I know that we've invested in people almost against what logic would tell you is intelligent to do.
Sure.
And we've invested in people, helped them out with other opportunities they've had come in, to the point they've came and said, you know what, I was offered this job and I don't know what to do. And they trusted
Yep.
us enough to make the right decision and give them honest feedback,
Yep.
and they haven't left. They're still a part of the
Yep.
team because
Yep.
we treat them so good that these other opportunities come in, they know they can't replicate what they have now.
Well, yeah,
And
because
if they have a bigger
money
business,
isn't everything. Money isn't
it's really
everything.
not.
And like every study will tell you that. Literally every study will tell you that money is not the number one thing that drives a person's employment experience. But
Clarity.
everybody just thinks it does. Going back to your 5 to 5 and 8 to 8 thing, you know why that
Yeah.
is? Do you know why that is evolutionarily? It's just a funny little side story where you said you're
It's
an early riser and your partner's not.
yeah.
That goes back to the caveman days when
Okay.
we needed to keep the campfire going and protect ourselves
Mm,
from predators.
yeah.
So the reason that there's morning people and night people is actually
Mm,
biological because you and your partner are actually able to tend to your campfire and your protection for a longer stretch of the day
mm.
than two people that are on the exact same circadian rhythm. So that's
And that makes perfect
it's
sense.
interesting how that works. And if you
Mm,
expand that for the sake of making it like purposeful for the
mm,
conversation,
mm,
is you find people that have strengths and agendas that you don't have
mm,
and they complement you rather than just
mm.
being similar to you because two people that are different can get a lot farther than two people that are exactly the same.
I always reference the draft horse. A draft horse by itself can
Yep.
pull about 8,000 pounds. And so, common logic would say two of them, 16,000, but two horses that are in sync, that are unified,
Yep.
pulling in the same direction with the same output and the same
Yep.
effort, it's 32,000 pounds. And when
That's
I think
nuts.
of partnership, that's exactly how I look at it.
Yeah, that's nuts. Yeah, it's crazy, but just going back to people, it's funny. Like one of the things that I've calculated in part of my work is the cost of a bad hire.
Hmm.
And if you look at somebody that makes $30 an hour, call it 60 grand a year, losing that person within the first 6 months can cost you realistically anywhere from $50,000 to $80,000 in actual money, actual productivity, and that doesn't include the incalculable cultural damage that it does
Yeah.
to a business, especially a
The
small
indirect.
business. Yeah.
Hmm.
So if you think about it that way, you can pay somebody an extra $5 an hour. That's $10,000 a year, or you can risk a 50 to $80,000 loss
Hmm.
plus the incalculables, the indirects. So to me, it's you could even for some people could need to look at that and say, okay, this is a risk reward decision. The amount that you pay somebody needs to be inverse of the risk of losing them.
Hmm.
So if somebody's truly replaceable, you don't need to be aggressive on pay because because you can find somebody else and easily ramp them. It's not costly. But for those jobs that are not very replaceable, you need to consider the risk of losing that person and the cost of losing that person when you choose how much you want to pay that person. And that's one
Hmm.
of those things where, like you said, you go into these hiring situations with your eyes wide open, knowing what you're trying to accomplish. Whereas most people are just like, oh, my job, like anybody would say, oh, my job as like a business owner is to hire people, at and get them, be able to pay them as low as I possibly can, but keep them like happy enough to keep working here.
You already lost.
Lost. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because you're showing right at the start, you don't value that person for the person.
Yep.
This is one thing, Doug, I'm really interested on your opinion on this. We're talking about business. This is a professional setting in which we're talking about. I think the number one driver of a successful business is the personal aspect
Sure.
and the development personally, how you treat people, how you talk to them, the way you view their life in general,
Sure.
and how do they fit into the overall picture of that business. But
Sure.
when you think about developing a person professionally, everyone thinks about what is the niche or the specific thing that you're doing as a business. But what
Sure.
about communication? What about leadership?
Sure.
How do you spell out what you're doing? How do you get clear? How do you communicate? I think the
Sure.
personal side of development is probably the most underrated thing that is overlooked today. Investing in a person for them to get better is driving the business up no matter what. But if
Yep.
you miss that and the expectations go
Yeah.
up, but the development of that person doesn't, and there's not very many people, Doug, like me and you, that are going to go out on our own and learn a skill and get better at it when we're not paid to do it, when we're
Sure.
not expected to do it, or it's not very clear on how to do it. We
Sure.
learned as a byproduct of what we didn't want to become. We caught something and we taught ourselves how to never become that. A lot
Sure.
of people don't have that skill set or desire. So you don't need to bottle feed them or, you don't have to baby them, but giving them the resources to be successful and showing
In
them what the
life.
outcome can be. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. And there's so
There's,
many there's so many crossovers, right?
mm,
Like I was I'll give you a perfect example. I was talking to my newest employee. I asked her to do something for me, and I overheard her on the phone, and I said, "Hey, I need you to call this company or this person or whatever and get them to give us move the date on something, whatever it was." And she called them and she said something like, "Hey, would you mind? Would it be okay if this and that?" And like we got off the call and I said, "Hey, not trying to be critical, but when you want something, that's not the most effective way to get it. The most
mm,
effective way to get it is to be much more direct, much more assertive, own your position, not be rude, but instead of saying, "Hey, I'm
mm,
sorry to bother you. Would it be all right if," is to say, "Hey, we have a conflict at this date. I'd like to move the meeting to that date. Would that be all right with you?" And that's it. No apologize. Don't apologize when you didn't do anything wrong, that kind of thing. And I explained to her how that can help you meet your objectives just in life in general. Like we both
yes.
have small kids. Like that's gold when you need to get your
Mm.
small kids to do something. So these are the types of things where like anytime you can make a parallel between what somebody needs to do in their job and how it helps them in life. Like we were in my insurance agency, we were trying to help our account managers who are not salespeople. We were trying to just get them to understand a little bit of how sales works. And it's the same thing of getting your kids to eat their vegetables.
Yeah.
Everybody's a salesperson.
Mhm.
Everybody's a salesperson. So every opportunity I get, I try to help people grow and or at least listen, as business people, it's not we have to kind of draw a fine line, right? Because I'm not there to like be her life coach. It's not my role and I don't want to overstep and I want to respect the boundaries between what this person does for a paycheck and how they want to live their life. We have to respect those boundaries.
Mhm.
So I try to kind of just subtly make connections between how what I'm asking you to do here
Mhm.
has a positive effect on what you do when you're not here. And
Yeah.
I found that to be like a good way to go about it with while also respecting boundaries because I think that's important too is to recognize like recognizing boundaries is important. I mean, you hear all these stories about people that just expect the world of you or like people somebody passes away and it's like, "Hey, aren't you coming in for the meeting in the morning?" It's like, "No, I'm not."
Yeah.
So, I think that's important.
I have a couple examples, and one of them that comes to mind. There was a guy probably 7 or 8 years ago that I was had come into my office after a long day, been missing work, not doing the right things with how he responded to people, not doing what he was directed to do, and just it was like he was trying to get fired. That was the state of it.
Sure.
And I brought him into my office, and I could see the look on his face, like he was personally distraught. I couldn't tell, I didn't know what, I didn't know
Something
why,
was
but
wrong.
he knew what he was there for. He knew that he was going to be fired that day.
Yep.
And I sat him down and I'm sitting there talking to him. I'm like, man, what's going on with you? Like, this isn't you. This is not how you operate normally. Talk to me. What's going on in your life? Is there something I can help you with? And Doug, for like the next 3 hours, we had a conversation. It changed his life because
Oh yeah.
I recognized I'm going to compile his issue, whatever it is. And even if it doesn't fix the business situation, I care enough about him as a person that I
Sure.
see you, I hear you, or will hear you. This isn't normal. So what is it that's going on? And if they don't
Sure.
want to talk, that's fine. But giving them the platform, like, hey, I care enough. Here's my arms open. Like, let's talk about this. And he's a foreman for us now. So, you
Love
know,
that. I love that.
changed his life. I didn't know it even impacted him until years later when I started a podcast and I started telling some of my stories. He's like, man, I was listening to your podcast. He's like, you probably don't remember this, but you did this for me that day. And it was a
Yeah.
subtle little thing, a gesture that I had that made an impact on him. And I remember that, like I've done that a lot because that wasn't done for me. Probably the same as you with stories where you
Yeah.
were never shown that way. It was do this. I'm not going to tell you why. Just fucking do it. And you're
Yeah.
being unproductive in it. But if you tell someone where they need to go, what they need to do to get there, and you show what's in it for them, but then you care enough about them on the human level to say, hey, this is the discrepancy in which we agreed that this would get done. Every Monday through Friday next week, you're going to show up on time. That's expectation. 3 of the 5 days, though, you showed up 10 minutes late. Can we talk about why that is the case? So the expectation was clear. Then you talk about the discrepancy and what was agreed on.
Yep.
Not, hey, stupid fuck, like, why did you show up late again?
Yeah.
Because if you do that, you automatically are putting them in attack mode or defense mode. But
Yep.
you just talk about the discrepancy. And then it's like, oh, well, they're not attacking me. They're
Yep.
addressing the issue.
Yeah.
Well, I couldn't hit the bus to get here on time, or the bus was late, or I don't have transportation. I'm walking 10 miles. You never know
Yep.
the situation until you
Of
peel back the
course.
layers. And that's one of the most misunderstood. We always assume the worst in people a lot of the time, but not
Yeah.
knowing enough or caring enough to uncover the story to see what the truth is.
And this is generational stuff.
Oh,
This is
absolutely.
generational stuff. So like people like for anybody that's listening and just isn't jiving with a lot of this,
Mm.
the way things were is not the way things are, and the way things are is not the way they will be. And this is the way of the future because people like our society and our just humanity in general is getting to a place where you don't have to work in a coal mine when you're 8 years old anymore. At least not in the United States. There are places that still have the developing countries that still have lots and lots of issues. So I don't want to be naive to that. But in in the United States and in the developed world, people care about themselves a lot more than they were taught to in the past. And
Hmm.
if you're not on board with that, you're going to go the way of the dinosaurs eventually. And you may be successful, but you're not going to leave a legacy. And listen, everybody's got their own prerogative, but like this is not something where you just have to be this way because that's the way it should be. It's the way you need to be to serve others the best, to serve your
Hmm.
clients, to serve your patients, to serve your community. And it's
Hmm.
it's something that can be learned. It can be learned if you frame it in like, oh, kids these, people that just frame it as kids these days or so. And you and I were talking, I think before you started recording, we were talking about the employers that say, "Oh, nobody wants to work anymore." And
Yeah.
that's just bullshit. It's you said no, nobody wants to work for you. And that's
Hmm.
the truth. So I would challenge anybody who maybe has their head cocked listening to some of the stuff that we're talking about. Try it. Try it.
Yes.
You know what?
Yeah.
Because it's a really fucking nice way to live. It's a wonderful way to live. It's a wonderful way to put your pillow put
Mhm.
your head on your pillow every night and wake up the next morning and come do it again and again and again and
Yeah.
again and again.
It's a dynamic that is misunderstood generationally because
Sure.
the secondary question to all kids these days, what's plan B? Because plan A is no solution. So you have no answer to your biggest problem if that's what it is, kids
Right.
these days.
Right.
What else are you going to do? Just live with it? Like,
Right. Right.
what else? What other option is there? And for probably the last however many generations, from the late 1800s, it's
Yep.
always been a generational thing. I
Yep.
want to see, this is a very interesting topic for me because the view that I have now is all from growing up in a very cutthroat cowboy, hard-nosed, pride-driven, ego first type of leadership. And
Sure.
it was just what it was. Industry related, yes, also culture related, both. But I think about scarcity and abundance. There's an abundance of opportunity today. That's probably why kids are not going to be treated like shit because
Yep.
they don't have to. There's
Yep.
abundance of resources that allow them to go do what they want in life.
Yep.
100 years ago, that wasn't the case.
Yep.
We had to survive. So the Great Depression, era, call it 3 generations ago ish. And I think about from that lens, you would think like my grandpa's generation, he's 85 years old. He was
Yep.
self-employed, built houses. And then, the next generation, and then now to ours. The
Yep.
Great Depression was scarcity. Dude, I mean, they were barely able to put food on the table. It was a absolute survival, like
Yep.
chaos nation at that point.
And you did what you
And
needed to
then
do, and you couldn't afford to worry about how people were speaking to you.
there was no hard feelings at all because no one
No,
had feelings. They wanted to eat enough to not die the next day. And
you
that was
couldn't
like
afford
life.
feelings. You couldn't afford to have
Yes.
feelings.
Yes. So there was an absolute scarcity of resources.
Yep.
And they had an abundance of work ethic though, because there was no other choice, right? They
Sure.
they didn't know anything but just 18
Sure.
hours a day, all day, every day.
Sure. Survival.
And then yeah, they take that and then the next generation learns it, which would be like my dad's generation,
Yep.
where they take that culture and that narrative, that mindset, and it's ingrained in them so much that they can't undo it or unsee it. Most of them live through that. So they're probably hoarding stuff, and they
Yep.
had the 80s where the interest rates were through the roof, and
Yep.
the gas shortages, all the things that happened throughout that time. But then my generation comes up, and I'm 37. I think you said you're 44. And
Yeah.
it's like, okay, me and you grew up where I was 16 years old and I had a cell phone,
Yep.
and technology became existent when we were young.
Yep.
And now we have AI. We didn't grow
Yep.
up with it, but now we have it. So
Yep.
we went through every phase of technology advancement that you would ever have as a culture,
Yep.
or our age did.
Yep.
My daughter asked me one day, Dad, what was an iPad like when you grew up? I started laughing, like she didn't know that
Yeah.
we didn't have them then.
Yeah.
And thinking about from then until now, we have a abundance now of resources. Information is free, it's instant,
Yep.
but we have a scarcity of clear direction. What
Yep.
do you want out of life? What does fulfillment look like? We have more access today to what we should need to be fulfilled. And I would say that there's probably less fulfilled people today than ever before. But are
Sure.
people actually living, or are they just going through the motions and not getting clear on what they want? And that's why
Yeah.
the money part, money isn't going to buy your happiness. Now it's going to allow you
No.
freedom and flexibility, but what do you want freedom of or for?
Yeah.
And what does
I
the
th
end look like?
and I think that's because when you talk about abundance, there's an abundance of options. So I
Mhm.
think I think fulfillment 2, 3, 4 generations ago meant something way different and way simpler than it means
Yeah.
now. So
Yeah.
it was a lot like, again, going back to the
Mhm.
caveman days, fulfillment was waking up the next day. And maybe if you achieved nirvana, that was having a full belly for like 3 days in a row.
Yeah.
So like
Once every
imagine,
3 days. Yeah.
yeah. So like the bar to fulfillment is so much higher now
Mhm.
because of what we see and what we experience. Where like you got kids who are like upset if they don't have the newest version of the iPhone or
Oh,
something
yeah.
like that. And
Mhm.
like, what gets me though is like we collectively made the world the way it is. Like
Yes.
we have nobody to blame but ourselves. So
1000%.
it's kind of it's what are we going to do together and individually to make it as best as we can. There's things that may get
Mhm.
away from us every once in a while. That's going to happen. But the reason people aren't fulfilled is because fulfillment now has 40,000 criteria
Yeah.
where it used to have two. So I think that's one thing that we can learn from the past and learn from looking backward is in in a practical sense, I have everything that a human should ever want.
Yes.
Everything that a human should ever want. And again, this is I'm talking about developed nations where we have food and security and
Mhm.
things like that because there are still people that aren't fortunate enough to have those things. But if you do, and like I lately have caught myself talking about like my problems, but I always call them first world problems. I
Yeah.
remind myself and whoever I'm talking to that the discomfort that I'm experiencing right now from my fucking kitchen renovation is the absolute best
Yeah.
problem anybody in their entire world could ever have. The stress that I experience from raising
Mhm.
a healthy 6 year old and a healthy 2 year old is the absolute
Yes.
best problems that I could ever have. That my kids are loud and obnoxious because they're safe and they're happy and they're fed. They're
Mhm.
the best problems that I could ever have. So I'm really embracing. I think people would be happier if they embraced their problems.
Well, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you probably used to dream about having the problems that you do today.
Yeah.
Like you couldn't have dreamed of having that as a problem in your life.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
always
That
go
they
back to
say
that
that like this
frame.
is the problems you're experiencing now are the things that you dreamed about 5 years
Yeah.
ago or however long ago it was.
Yeah. And I think about the ability to be present. My life has all the meaning right now that I want it to have, and I'm
Yep.
still pursuing my own ideal of greatness. But it doesn't mean there's a gap in what it is from today until I'm not chasing this discrepancy and trying to fill a gap.
Sure.
Today has meaning. And when you think about it, I think so many people, like what you said, there's options. So they feel like today doesn't have meaning because I don't know what I want or where I'm going.
Yeah.
And so it makes it a discrepancy in value of today, which defeats any purpose or an intuition or being intentional about it. And it's like, you don't need to become somebody one day, you're somebody now. So you have meaning today, regardless of where you're at. You just have to direct it in the right area for the future self that you want to become. So my 10 years from now, that's the superhero I'm chasing is just the better version
Yeah.
of me.
So
It's not someone
how do
else.
you focus on that day in and day out though? Like how would you recommend like somebody that's feeling that way,
Mhm.
somebody that's not necessarily cherishing the journey or doesn't see it
Mhm.
as a journey or doesn't like the journey that they're on,
Mhm.
how do you how do you reconcile that struggle on a daily basis, on an hourly basis?
It's the ability to be bored and be okay with it. It's looking at the small thing that you can win on today, not the long-term thing. I think a lot of people don't have fulfillment because they don't have accomplishment or production in their life. And that's
Okay.
just a personal thing that I look at. But what's the smallest amount of time that I can input daily and create change in habit or what I
Okay.
view, what I consume with mental or physical part? I have 5 standards that I live by. I call it the standards of greatness, and they are 5 standards non-negotiable for me daily. No snooze. Set my alarm clock. I wake up non-negotiable no matter what.
Okay.
Physical output. I do my workout first thing.
Okay.
Physical output, 10 minutes though. 10 minutes of daily intentional movement. It could be walk. It could be a 10-minute walk and that's it, but it's moving your body with intent for 10 minutes.
Okay.
Mental input, 10 minutes of quality information that you consume at least 10 minutes on a
Okay.
daily basis because it's quality in, quality out,
And that's
garbage
so
in,
achievable. Everybody's
garbage
got
out.
10
10
minutes.
minutes, 10
Yeah.
minutes. And then the fourth one, track and attack. You track progress. You cannot manage what you cannot measure. And then you attack every day with intent. So it's not vicious, it's intentional attention. If you're going to take a nap on Sunday, take the best nap, be intentional about it. Don't be 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And then
Sure.
it ends with gratitude and preparation every single night. I take a little bit of time to myself. I have gratitude for the day. I win desired outcome or I learn. If I didn't get what I wanted out of that day, I learn from it and I move forward. Look in the mirror,
That's a
assess it for
win-win.
what it is.
Every day is a
Yeah.
win-win because you either won or you learned something.
Yeah. So you
I
don't
love
lose
that.
ever.
I
And
love that.
then it's gratitude. And then the next one's preparation. Success today started last night. I set my clothes out for the day, for the gym. I do the little minute things. I wear a
Yeah.
black shirt, the same damn black shirt every single day. And I
Yeah.
might put on shorts or I might put on jeans, a pair of
Yeah.
dress boots or a pair of shoes. But like I'm very simple in life because I don't want to consume myself in the things that should be thoughtless.
Yeah.
I put my focus on what matters. And if I have anxiety about what I'm going to wear tomorrow, I've already lost. So preparation is just not having to do the thing in the moment when it's already set in place. So what I'm going to eat, what I'm going to drink, how I'm going to
Yeah.
operate that day, everything's done the night before. So
Yeah.
success is inevitable today because I'm already prepared for it.
I love that, man. Thanks for
And
sharing that.
that's,
I love that.
yeah,
That's good
absolutely.
stuff. That's
And
good
I have,
stuff.
and it's on my phone. You probably can't see it if I pull it up, but like it's the screensaver on the back of my phone. Every
Yeah.
day, that's what I see. And that's the first thing that, pops up every morning. I don't know if you can see it or not, but you
No,
probably can't.
it
Oh,
can't.
I can send it to you, but it's like every
Yeah.
single day. I live by this standard. And guess what? It's hard to lose whenever the results are inevitable if you follow them 5 things. And it's that
Well,
simple.
there is no losing for
Never,
you.
because it's
There
accepting.
there's no losing. There's winning and there's learning.
Mhm.
And
And losing is acceptance.
I think that's the biggest thing. Like those are all big. I think the biggest thing that I just got out of what you said is there is no such thing as losing. There's winning and there's learning, and those are the only two options.
Because the only way that I fail is if I quit. And the only way that I quit is if I'm dead. And to me, I'll
Yep.
never quit because even if I'm dead, I'll still be trying to do the thing until my last breath.
Yep.
That's just
I
it.
love it, man. I love it,
So
man.
it's just, and it's so easy and so simple. But the starting point tomorrow, 5 to 10 minutes of something that you're not doing today. What is so I love the word compartmentalize.
Me too.
With the end of mind working backwards, who is the person that I want to become to achieve this thing? Because it's not the goal you set, it's who you are that can achieve that. I
Okay.
set a goal. What are the standards that would be required for me to achieve this? And then this is what done looks like, and work backwards from there to right now, and then start small, something consistent that can be done. And it's going to be the results cannot be stopped if you just do the thing that you're supposed to do to get it.
Love that.
But it's the standard, not the goal.
Love that.
Doug, this has been an absolute pleasure. Your philosophy, the way that you frame it, we have some follow up to do because I want to talk some business offline with you
For
about
sure, man.
all kind of things. I cannot thank you enough, dude. I know we had some technical difficulties getting started, but we might
Yep.
have to just do this again. We might just
For
have to do
sure,
it
man.
again.
Anytime. I really appreciate you having me on. Thank you for the great time, and we'll definitely stay in touch, man. I appreciate you.
Yeah, I'll have my people get with your people because I am
You
a
got it.
dumpster fire when it comes to that. We'll get something on the schedule though.
Awesome. All right, brother.
All right. All right, man. Have a good one. Thank
You
you.
too.
This has been another edition of the Iron and Infrastructure Podcast. Doug, leadership guru on today. Absolute blast. Until next time, we'll see you guys later.